Hello, everybody. We are back for episode 2 of the Men with Issues show. 2 or 18, or however you want to think of it. It's 2 here, though, right?
That's right.
Why make the math difficult? Let's call it 2, which is easy to multiply, add, and subtract. Oh, man. That's crazy. All right, for those of you who have never seen our show before, how did you find us? Search? I don't know. How did you even locate us? Write to us, Men with Issues. Hey, watch this. You'll like this. menwithissuespodcast@gmail.com. That is our email address. How many times have you said, do the email address? We must have the email address. And it's like every time.
I forget every time.
It's like every time it's like, poof. I don't know. But I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to make a banner.
As soon as the show's over, too. Like 5 minutes after the show's over, I'm like, I didn't say anything about the email.
Nobody will be contacting us again this week. Oh, I'm going to make the banner right now. It'll be fun. Hey, what? I got to type the Men with Issues. It is men, as I type, with issues. One finger type and don't judge. Podcast at gmail.com. So there it is. You can email us if you want to talk about something, if you want to respond to something. Pretty much whatever you want to contact us for, you can do that. You'll tell us we're great, you love us, or the opposite.
Topics. Give us some topics.
There it is, right. I'll leave it up there for a minute. Man. StreamYard's gone and added some great fonts and bubbles for us to use. Thank you, StreamYard. Appreciate that.
They've got all fancy.
I know. Look at that. I like that. It's very nice. Men with Issues. Let me make sure I spelled everything right because it's on the fly. And
you did.
I'm an awful speller. Most people don't know that because spell check exists, but I spell horribly. My vocabulary is fine, just the spelling's awful. So I mean,
you went to college.
Well, for a year, I dropped out.
Still counts.
Does it? Does it though? I mean, like, did you like? That's the two questions. Like, did you go to college? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Did you complete college? What are we having for dinner tonight? I'd be like, what's the weather today? I got good grades. I just went into the trades because I want to take a 25-year round trip to my life's goals. So, trades, yeah. Well, let me hand it over to Beaver for a second because Beaver thinks of all the topics. But here's what we're in charge of. Beaver's in charge of hard topics. I'm in charge of random Bible verses. So mine doesn't come till later. So go ahead, Beaver.
I want to switch that up, though. Just going to throw that out there. I don't want to be the one always coming up with the topics because I'm going to run out of stuff.
Oh, come on now. You'll be all right.
But no, I think it's a pretty good we try to keep a good mesh of stuff. I like doing just a random topic, whether it be like tonight, mandatory military service or masculinity or other things we've talked about in the past, and then mix God into it. I think is a good mesh of things.
I think you're right on the money there. So what made you think of the mandatory military service or conscription or however you want to say it?
I guess just looking at the military today, society today, and looking at the pros and cons. I'd watched a video on, I think it was South Korea. They were talking about mandatory military service, and they were interviewing a bunch of young men. Some of them had already been through their service. Some of them were getting ready to go through service, and they were asking them, if they approved of it, if they thought it was ridiculous, just their thoughts on it as a whole. And, at least for South Korea, the majority of them, they approved of it.
Why did they say they approved of it? What did they like about it?
Just honoring their country, giving back to their country.
I can see that because who is their neighbor? North Korea. And you probably feel like you want to do your part to keep North Korea because they have mandatory military service too. But you got to feel like their soldiers are probably not as happy as South Korea. I'm not sure. I'm just going to throw it out there. But if I lived in North Korea, although you never know because you could be kind of brainwashed by national media service and stuff like that, I guess.
Yeah.
We're the good guys.
So I don't know that I'm on the fence about whether it would be a good thing for the United States or not. Ultimately, I think no. But I think there would be some pros in there as to what it would give young people.
You surprised me, Beaver. I thought you were going to be a yes.
No. I think the cons outweigh the pros. as bad as I hate to say that, because I think there's a lot of good, at least in my experience, a lot of good that comes from serving in the armed forces for your country. I think there's too many cons to it for it to ever work here.
It was here they had the draft for a while during Vietnam.
Yeah, but since Vietnam, we've kept the numbers high enough to where we don't need that. And I hope we never get to the point of that again, where we have to implement a draft.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. What is the standing army of the United States? How many men is it? Do you know?
I have no idea. It's changed so much. I'm pretty sure it's went down drastically, probably since I was in. But I don't know the exact number.
I think it did. I think it did go down because we have. Well, I don't know. It's different for our army because we have so much technology that you really, if you have like an army from like a not to say a third world country, but a country that's just not as rich as our country. You're not going to have all those bells and whistles and like guys flying drones and unarmed or not unarmed but unmanned stuff. So it really plays a factor, I guess, into what size the army can be.
Yeah, well, and I don't think we need the amount of people that we used to have in the military anymore. I mean, wars are not fought and won over just troop numbers anymore. You know, there's technology that does a lot of the work. I'm not saying you don't have to have valuable men and women to get things done. I'm just saying it's not as necessary. You know, we're not lining up on a battlefield just running at each other anymore. So I don't think numbers are a huge thing anymore.
Man, The Patriot is a great movie. Just by the way, I'm not gonna.
Just a little plug for The Patriot there.
It's just really good. I call it Colonial Braveheart. That's what I call it, because it's like he did both those movies and they're both great.
Colonial Braveheart.
But that's where the military. You know, the military. What is that? That's the late 1700s, where people are just lining up because these guns take 30 seconds to 2 minutes to load, because you're talking about black powder stuff. And we've gone from there to, you know, even in the first Iraqi war, like in the early 1990s, we were shooting missiles out of the sky, Scud missiles with Patriot missiles. I mean, that's pretty impressive that you could shoot one missile, hit another missile with it. And now we're even farther along than that. I don't know. No. Who knows what we have at our disposal now? I mean, we probably don't know the full picture of it, but it's just so incredible that we just compare it. And some of these countries are still stuck. They're not standing in lines, more than likely, but they're stuck with the level of technology we had probably 30 or 40 years ago. So each country is a different discussion, I guess. But, you know, I agree with you. I don't think it should be a thing here at all. I don't agree with it just because I think we live in a free country and we live in a good country. So we always have sufficient amount of people that are filled with patriotism that volunteer. I don't think we need to have, you know.
But will we always? Here's a totally different rabbit hole to go down. We won't go down this hole, but we may have good patriotic people now that are volunteering to serve. But the more we degrade our country and what it means to be an American, 30, 40, 50 years from now, are you going to have those numbers of people volunteering to serve the military? Are they going to be as patriotic as they are today? That's
a I'll ask you. You were in the military. You were in Iraq. So if we were to go, and let's say the antithesis of what you want is a left-wing government, far-left government. So let's say that happens. We go, we're not going to be socialist. That's probably an improbability. But let's say we're a democratic socialist country. Are you then less inclined to say, I'm fighting for this country? You personally?
Yeah. I mean, you're saying if I had the mind frame of like a liberal or leftist person.
If we had the government that was leftist and you were just exactly who you are and you were in a position that you could fight for the country, let's say we're all younger or whatever, would you still fight for that country like you would for a country in 2000, whatever year it was, 2009, 2010? I forget what years you were there.
Yeah. Yeah, I probably would. And the reason being, just because you don't agree completely with your country, this is where I live. This is where I'm proud to be from. This is where my family lives. And I feel like you should give back to the country that gives you all the freedoms that we have. So regardless of how stupid government is, I would still feel it would be my obligation. Yes.
You see it like an American ideal instead of just a government there at that time. You see it as a collective picture, like this is our history. And I can really understand that. One of the things I was thinking about is, military conscription. Like you're saying, you're fighting for your country. You're doing your part for your country. But to me, I was thinking this. I was like, well, it's not just military. You could be doing a lot of stuff for your country. So wouldn't it be just as easy for the government to say, hey, we're going to start conscripting people because we need to have better highway systems. We're conscripting people for the local police force. Could that be something that would occur? You have one example, but you've never had the other two, as far as I know. Unless you're in prison, you go out there and be in the highway system. But I mean, is it the same?
Well, I think that's actually one of my talking points is, because I disagree with making mandatory military service a thing. Well, for one, before we ever even go down that road, for one, only 3 out of 10 young adults would even be eligible to serve. It's like somewhere around 29% is what they say that would even be eligible. So, and then out of that, some of the we're talking about pros and cons. Some of the things that I think would be just bad news for us would be one, the armed forces budget would be ridiculous. Think about the amount of money you would have to put into training people, let's say every year or every 2 years as they're cycling through. Because let's be realistic. If you take 18, let's say you make the age bracket 18 to 25. Okay, between 18 and 25, you have to serve 2 years in the armed forces. So most kids, this is just me thinking out loud, most kids would probably want to go ahead and get that over with. So let's say 60 or 70% of those say at 18, I'm going to go ahead and go do my 2 years, get out at 20 and start living my life. I'm not going to wait till I'm 23 to do my 2 years or wait till I'm 24 to do my 2 years. So you have a lot of kids coming in right out of high school or shortly after. And so they look at it as this is where one of the bad things is they look at it as an obligation instead of an honor or a lifelong career.
Right.
Okay.
Different mindset.
This is something I have to do for 2 years, and I'll hurry up and get it over with so I can go on about living my life. So majority of those kids that come in at 18, they're not staying. They're going to do their 2 years and they're going to get out. So every 2 years you're having to train new guys over and over and over and over again. And what a lot of people don't realize, and some of the military guys in the chat can, confirm this, but a lot of times, depending on the job that you're doing, it might take you longer than 2 years to even get efficient at the job that you're doing.
That's true. Yeah.
So you got a bunch of kids that don't know what they're doing, and they're cycling out before you ever make them a good soldier. And it's just a repetitive cycle. I just don't see it. Plus you have these young people today that have this, I don't care attitude about stuff. Or let's say they're not patriotic, like we talked about, they're just doing it as an obligation. Are they really going to take care of the person beside them when it comes to wartime? How many of them are going to be refusing to obey what their leadership tells them to do during wartime? Let's say for religious reasons. There's the VA system. If you had millions of kids cycling through the armed forces, you would have millions of kids lined up at the VA wanting handouts for stuff. The VA system's already terrible. Could you imagine if you had millions of 20-year-old kids going in there trying to get benefits for serving 2 years?
Because they already at this point, it's an inefficient system according to pretty much anyone you talk to the VA about. So yeah, especially I guess we're operating under the assumption that we're going to expand the military drastically, as well as conscript these guys, I guess. So if we're actually, because we've been pretty well suited. I mean, the draft hasn't been around since the Vietnam War. I don't know exactly what year it was we got rid of the draft, but I think it was in the 70s. So we haven't needed it for any of the smaller incursions or either one of the Iraqi wars, the Afghani theater, because they were fighting Afghanistan and Iraq at the same time. So it's a pretty expanded conflict. So we haven't needed it since then. I don't think we're going to need it. I think we have a country that most people feel pretty patriotic about, and that sustains our military. Obviously, you went over there. You know the mindset of people that went over there. In general, what was the mindset of the people that you fought with? Is that what you would say? Would you say they're just patriotic people, or are they trying to, start a career, or what?
I would say 99% of them they wanted to be there. They knew what they were getting into. They knew that they were going to end up overseas, and it was something they felt they needed to do for their country. So as far as there was no lacking of patriotism, we'll say that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's funny. It's whenever I was thinking about this, I was operating under the assumption that you were going to say that it was a good idea, that we should do it. So I had all these other things down here to kind of ask you.
Totally threw you off. Threw you off.
I got stuff about amendments and stuff like that, and that's like it's nothing now because we're not going to be able to discuss it because we both agree that it's not a good idea. But I know. But
I will say this: there are a lot of pros that would come of it. I feel like one being respect for the country that you live in, like we've already talked about. Some of the other things you learn discipline, you learn organization, you learn accountability, self-reliance. For me, being in the Army values, loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, personal courage. All those things are valuable things when you're coming up as a young adult, to learn all those things. And I think it makes you a better adult, makes you a better employee. So there's good things there, but there's too many things that just wouldn't work otherwise.
Well,
like you said earlier, let me throw this out there though. Just like you said, I do feel like there should be some type of national service required though, of young people.
Okay.
And whether that be, you could go down whatever, but we'll say National Park Service. We'll say tutoring or mentoring kids that are still in school, helping the elderly, helping within your community, let's say with national disasters, stuff like that. You should be required to serve at least a year in some form or fashion. Call it national service, call it whatever you want to call it. But to give back to your country and your community. Now, I don't have all the answers for that. I don't, but I feel like there should be something.
That's interesting that you said that, because I think we can still have the discussion now, because that's a variant of having military service. Of course, it's a little bit less daunting because you're not going to the military, you're doing something else. But should you be compelled to do anything like that? I think that's the question we have to answer. Like whether it's the National Forestry Service, the National Trash Service, whatever it is, should you be compelled to do it? I think that's the question.
I think you should be, and I think if enough young people were compelled to give back, if they were taught from a young age, not that it was a requirement, but it was more like an honor, I guess is the best way to put it. You're taught from a young age that once you become of a certain age, you should give at least a year to your community, to your country, and have all these different avenues that you can go down.
Interesting.
And so instead of it being a requirement, it's just kind of like a given as a young adult coming up that, hey, I know I'm going to give back when I turn 18. And I've already decided that I'm going to volunteer with national disasters in my state. They've already got it figured out. You should want to give back. It shouldn't be, like we were talking about earlier, an obligation. It shouldn't be an obligation. It should be something you want to do.
I agree with that part of it. I think you should want to do it, but I don't think you should be compelled to do it because I think that's too much government, whether that be and I'll say that knowing that it could be very good, just like the military service. It could be very good for an individual, but I think in America, you're free to be as awful a person as you want to be. Does that make sense? You're free to be lethargic and sit on your butt while other people work harder than you and support the country. That's one of the reasons we're free. And I don't like saying that, but I think that if we're going to be true, we've got to keep that freedom.
But I think we should also be realistic about our freedom too. not say, well, I live in a free country, so I can do whatever the crap I want to. You should want to volunteer and do things like that because you are free and you're contributing to the country that gives you that freedom to do whatever you want to do.
And I agree with that. I think that people should do it. I just don't think they should be compelled to do it. But I agree. They should be doing it. If you live in America, you have a good life, more than likely. 90% of us, 95% of us probably have a really great life, and you should be doing something, whether it's picking up trash on the side of the road or whatever you're doing for your community. We just differ on whether you should be compelled to do it or not. That's all.
Yeah. I just think that, it sounds cliche, but I'm a firm believer in it. I got it tattooed on my arm that freedom isn't free. You don't just come up and have, everything's not free willy-nilly. Somebody's paying for it.
I agree
There's
with
the
you
price on it.
And I agree. If somebody doesn't rise to the occasion and doesn't do any of these things, somebody else will be paying for it. Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
And I think young people now come up thinking, that they're just supposed to be given handouts because we live in a free country. I think it kind of goes back to what JFK said was, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. You should constantly be wanting to serve your country and make your country a better place.
I think that's something that's missing right now is servitude, the mindset in general of serving something other than yourself. I think that's probably one of the reasons why you might say
selfless service. Yeah.
Right. Selfless service. Why you say people should be compelled is because we don't have the mindset to rise to the occasion and go do it ourselves, which that's a sad thing to say. And I'm not defending that mindset in any way, shape, or form. I'm just defending the utmost freedom I think we should have. But I'm not defending the people that would not do anything. Like, whatever it's going to be. There's tiny things out there that people do collectively, cumulatively, like tutoring kids or something.
In other words, what you're saying is if you live in a free country, you should not have a government that dictates what you do because you live in a free country.
Essentially, yes. But like you're saying, people should appreciate it. Now, I mean, if people don't appreciate it, unfortunately, the way I see it, you're not going to be able to do much about them. I mean, you're not going to compel them to do it. In my world, I wouldn't compel them to do it. Does that hurt the country overall? I don't know. But I think sticking to that freedom, we have to hold that line, I think. So,
yeah. But
you know what? If people don't rise up and do what they're supposed to do, that bites us in the butt. But
well, and here's the thing. What would encourage, looking at 2020, looking at the society we live in, what would encourage a young person to join the armed forces today? What do you see as from the outside looking in? What do you see as beneficial of joining the armed forces?
If I was looking at joining the armed forces strictly as just trying to find pros in doing that, and we'll talk above and beyond, let's say, a call of patriotism, because I think that's probably one of your givens.
Yeah, take patriotism out of it.
I would do establishing a career that I thought would be a fairly successful career if I stuck with it for the entire time period. And that's probably the number one thing. Or trying to learn some kind of skill that I could use after I got out of the Army. Like, use it for an educational front. That's what I would think. That's would be my first year I would think of. Assuming that we're not in wartime or something like that.
Let me throw another wrench in there.
Okay.
You go into it knowing that you don't want to do it for 20 years. You don't want to make a career out of it, but you want to give back to your country. So you have it in your mind that you're going to serve, let's say, 2 or 4 years.
Okay.
So take that into consideration. You're not doing it for a career. You're doing it just to give back.
You're doing it strictly to give. Now you're giving the purpose. Then you're saying you're doing it strictly to give back to your country.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Roll with that. You want to give back to your country. What benefit do you have of giving back to your country? Let's say you're going to serve 4 years. 4 years. We'll just make it easy. 4 years is what you want to do in the Army. You want to do it because you want to give back, but what do you get out of it?
And you have to help me because you have to let me know what can be accomplished in 4 years in the Army. As far as you're giving back, you're doing your thing there. But I would ask you, in 4 years in the Army, what positives can you work out for yourself? I mean, what can you accomplish as far as in 4 years? Do you now have the skill set you need for a career back home? I mean, in 4 years,
Most likely not.
Most likely not. So you're going to be coming up short there. In 4 years, do you have? Now, what do they do for college currently in the Army? Do you know what they do for college? If you go in for it,
I don't know what they do currently.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know back in the day what they did.
Yeah, I think it's based on how many active duty days you have. Gives you X amount percentage of GI Bill to help cover for college. Now, what that number of days is, I don't know. Or maybe it's, I don't know if it's you. Surely it's not you had to serve in wartime because there's not always going to be wartime. So,
right.
I don't know. I don't know what it is now.
So what do you say? I mean, you asked a question. What would you say in 2 to 4 years? What would be the point of it beyond patriotic duty?
Here, I'll just sum it up like this. Okay. We have media and we have a society that doesn't necessarily agree with what our military does. They feel like we are the big brother to everybody. We try to play big brother to everybody else in the world. Mm-hmm. Okay. They talk bad about military guys going into Iraq or Afghanistan and having to take other people's lives when in their mind we shouldn't be there to begin with. Then you get out. Let's say you do 4 years, you get out. Okay. You have no career waiting on you. You're starting fresh. Society wants to now immediately say that you have a mental disorder because you've been in the military. So some people look at it as a good thing that you have military service. Some people look at it as a negative because is he screwed up? You have a VA system that wants to just throw, if you are messed up, you have a VA system that just wants to throw pills at you and not actually help you. I think if I was 18 years old now, I don't see the benefit. You know what I mean? Well, in other words, I would still serve like we've already talked about, but I'm saying on the outside looking in, I would see why a lot of young people today would say, no, I don't want no part of that because they're not going to take care of me whenever I get out. I'm going to I'm going to sacrifice and do all these things. But when I get out, then what?
So in that 2 to 4 year period, you're saying you're not invested enough to really make anything out of it besides falling into one of these categories.
You're not getting retirement. You don't get any type of retirement. And if you haven't, let's say you didn't go to any type of warfare. Okay. You stayed in the States the entire 4 years. So you don't have any injuries. More than likely you don't have PTSD or any of these things like that. So you really don't, there's really not anything that you qualify for as far as benefit wise. Now the argument can be made that you can get a VA loan for housing or, stuff like that, or GI Bill, whatever the terms are to that, to go to college. So that, I guess there's a couple things there. I'm just saying as a country, I don't think we don't encourage people to join the military anymore. And depending on what you're watching, they make it look like you're just directly serving Donald Trump, and that's it. You know what I mean?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So they're drawing a line between the military and the president, and that's kind of casting it. Well, for half the country, that'd be. Well, I don't know. What do you think about that? Drawing a line between Donald Trump and the military. Do you see that as a positive, or do you see it as a negative?
Well, I think you can't hide it. I mean, ultimately, he is the commander in chief. I don't think people join the military based on who's currently in office or anything like that. I don't like to think so anyway.
It wouldn't affect you. Let's take our last 5 or 6 presidents. None of those presidents being in office would deter you from fulfilling your military service.
No, I went in the military knowing that George Bush was fixing to be done, and we had Obama coming in. Yeah. And I had Obama as a commander-in-chief my last few years. So
That's right. Yeah, you were right on the line there, I guess, weren't you?
Yeah.
Well, I see what you're
I don't
saying.
know. I guess what I'm saying is we have to do a better job taking care of our veterans, and there has to be some type of benefit for young people, um, for wanting to join, for wanting to serve.
Now, the first thought I have when you say that is, what should change then about the military? And I can't tell you what should change because I wasn't there. But
I think there should definitely be more programs for you transitioning into the civilian world. Now there are some out there. I'm not saying there's not, but there should be more programs for you transitioning into a civilian job. There are a couple programs where they take your experience. Take your experience from the military. Say you were, I don't know. Let's say you were an IT guy in the Army. There are certain programs out there that will transition you into doing IT in the civilian world. But I think we need more. Steve makes a very good point. Maybe if you serve, you should get a tax break for the rest of your life. Maybe you should get some type of benefits regardless of whether you do 20 years or not. If you do 4, should there be some type of benefits that you get for the rest of your life?
I like
should
that.
You keep TRICARE insurance? When you're, that's the other thing. When you're active duty, you have TRICARE insurance, you and your whole family. You get out, you have nothing. So maybe if you serve 2, 4, 6 years, whatever, you get to keep TRICARE.
I like that plan. You're saying that now that's a real good incentive to serve. Now, I'm gonna ask you something else because you're talking about coming back and getting back into civilian life. Now, for someone who's non-combat, is that still a factor?
Yeah.
So you think just because you've been in that atmosphere for X amount of time, you still might have difficulty transitioning back to civilian life?
Yeah, don't get me wrong. It's near and dear to me. Combat is near and dear to me because that's what I chose to do. That's what I wanted to do. But I'm also realistic enough to know that you have to have those other jobs too. You have to have the admin jobs. You have to have the cooks. You have to have all those other jobs in order for it to work. Now, I may have to do worse things based on my MOS, but I'm not taking away from Joe Blow that was a cook for 4 years in Fort Benning or whatever. He still served his country. So yeah, I think they should. You still should get benefits regardless of whether you go to war or not, or whether you're combat or not.
Do you see those two things as equal? Combat and the cook at Fort Benning?
Do I personally see it as equal?
Yeah. Do you personally see it as equal? Honestly, it doesn't seem like it's equal. If you're fighting, people are trying to kill you, how is that equal to a cook? I know you're serving your country, but those are very different jobs, and we're at the very different liability to your life and family.
It is a very different job. I don't think you take. God, it's hard for me because you don't get to take anything away from the cook, right? He served in the military. He served his country. He did his time. He still had basic training requirements in order for him to get into the military. He still has physical fitness standards that he has to hold up to stay in. So there's a lot of things there that
I know what you're getting at here. If I'm assuming correctly, and you can tell me whether I'm wrong or right, if you say that the combat method of service is in this way greater, I don't know if you want to use the word greater or not, but you understand what I'm saying, greater than a cook, then it's almost like you're stepping on the cook in a way. I wouldn't call it betraying the cook, but stepping on the cook,
because that cook still stepped up and did what less than 1% of the population is willing to do. So I'm not taking anything away from that guy.
Right on. Okay.
I'm just not.
Well, hey, let me tell you this. My son comes up to me the other day, and I haven't told you about this yet. My son comes up to me, and he's been in JROTC for 3 years. He's going to be going into his 4th year later on in 2021, and he wants to go into the military later. But he comes up to me, and he's disturbed. He's upset, and he says, "Dad, I want to go to the military, but I don't want to take someone's life. I don't want to do that. I don't want to take anybody's life. And I respect that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there has to be a job for someone who wants to serve and not do that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You want to watch Hacksaw Ridge together or something. I mean,
and you should not force someone like that into a combat situation, because that's not good for either side. Okay. For one, it's not good for your son, because mentally it's something he's not capable of handling. And two, you don't put somebody like that in combat, because more than likely he's going to make a mistake, or if he does not pull the trigger, other people die because of his actions. So I see both sides of it. And yeah, you're right. He should still be able to serve in some capacity, but also he's realistic enough to know that I don't want to be put in that situation.
And he's 17 years old. So the thought of this whole process is daunting, very scary. And as you know, at my house, we, you know where we stand on things. So the idea of taking life is something that is a little bit alien, or something you wouldn't want to do. So I mean, it's tough. He said,
I struggle with it to this. I struggle with it to this day. You have those thoughts about, where do I stand with God based on what I've done? It's tough. Yeah, I'm going to tell you it's easy.
Well, man, if you didn't have more to say, but I've got a great verse for you.
Go ahead.
And I wasn't setting that up this whole time either. That flowed really naturally, and I actually, I appreciate it, because this some of the stuff I know it's hard to talk about on your end, so I appreciate it. Not that I have this planned here, but I have to find what I was going to talk about. With it. Well, the thing is, you said
break up the awkwardness. Go ahead.
No, you said it yourself. Where do I stand with God? Obviously referring to some deed in the past. Okay. We're not going to relive that. I'm just saying that's what you're referring to. And it's, to me, I read this today, and I knew it was in Romans, the book of Romans, and it just jumps out of the page how simple this is. Now, there's more to this than this just one sentence, but this is the gateway between us and our eternal kingdom. It says, because if you confess, this is Romans chapter 10, verse 9. Because if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's it.
Yep.
All those deeds, they don't mean you don't go or do go anywhere. It's just faith in that one verse. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I wanted to do this with my kids earlier. I did,
and you're 100% right. And I know I know those things. It doesn't make that thought in the back of your head go away, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah.
You have to have faith in what he says. Don't get me wrong. And I do. Doesn't make you feel any better.
Yeah. I understand it. I won't press it on you because I know how it is. But, yeah, I know. It would still be there. I don't think it would go anywhere. That's just one of the things that's going to be a burden.
Yeah.
Man.
And that's, and actually that's actually a topic right now in politics with this Raphael Warnock or whatever. He says that you can't serve God and the military. That's one of the things they've got him quoting on, these commercials or whatever. That you can't serve God and the military. What do you think about that?
That's something I've thought about a lot of times, because it comes down to the nuances of even the translation of the Bible. Because when they have commandments and one of them's thou shalt not kill and one of them's thou shalt not murder, depending on how it's translated, that's a huge difference. Thou shalt not murder. Plus, if you read the Bible, in a lot of spots, especially in the Old Testament, God has given favor to one army over another. So that was military. I mean, David and Goliath, I'm pretty sure that was army versus army, and they were just the singular parts right there that decided the battle.
Right.
So to me, I think military is something that's going to be a given. Now, whether or not that you should, well, I'm sure you do, repent for some of the deeds that happened on the battlefield, I wouldn't stop doing that. But I think that God understands that we have militaries that are going to fight each other, and people have to be part of that. So,
yeah.
I don't know. I hope when I read more, because that's one of the things I thought about, I hope when I read more, because like I said, it's been a couple months of reading this stuff, and I'm about to be in Corinthians. So I hope there's something that kind of sheds light on that. I really do. But that's my best guess for that. What do you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. So
I hope there's a verse somewhere, because what I found reading this stuff is what I hear people arguing about a lot. It's spelled out perfectly clear, and a lot of times there is no argument for like, this whole. I'm not going to get into some of this stuff this week, but people say you're going to hell if X happens. You're doing this if X happens. I mean, and you got to read the word. It's given to you to read, so you know what's going to happen. How are you going to live if you don't read the instruction manual? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's what, and then people argue about it. People that never read anything. And I know that because I've said some stuff, and now that I've read this, I realize how stupid I was. Because I didn't know what I was talking about. There was literally a passage. I'll tell you the name up here. We got plenty of time, right? All right, 42.
Yeah. Got plenty of time.
There was a passage in here, and it says, Marks of the True Christian. That's just the biblical title here they put on it.
Yeah.
And I won't read the whole thing. But here's some stuff here, and it just says, "Let love be genuine, abhor what is evil, hold fast to what is good, love one another with brotherly affection, outdo one another in showing honor." And this is Paul writing to the Romans. This is Romans. "Do not be slothful in zeal, be fervent in spirit, and serve the Lord." I mean, it's really, it's all about love. There's people that are saying God's mean to people, he hates homosexuals and stuff like that. It's all about love. You know, if you see a homosexual person passing you in the street, you're supposed to treat them with love. You know, the people that argue about that, I don't get.
And why is that? Why is that is the going? I guess the going rumor is the way to put it in society today. It's because man is taking it out of context.
Absolutely. I think they say, "Is it a sin?" You answer yes, it is a sin, and you have to come to Christ and get born again. And I think people don't believe that's possible. I don't think they believe that if you come to Christ, you can be born again when you are a homosexual or self-defined as a homosexual, whatever, bisexual, whatever. It's people that don't believe this process can happen. So that's why it doesn't happen for them. They don't believe, they don't pursue. And that's what I think. But you're supposed to treat them with love. I mean, there's not a Christian out there that's behaving like a Christian that's going to condemn someone on the street. I mean, one of the next passages I'm reading is, "Do not judge others." And I think we all know what that means. But they certainly do.
Well, and I think this leads right into our other topic.
Oh, my gosh. Look at this.
Look at that. Set it up perfectly.
Unplanned, man.
Why is it when people have bad experiences in churches and they turn their back on it completely and just run back off into the world? So in other words, when they have a bad experience in church, why do they take that as a failure on God's part?
They see a failure in the church, and then they say, to people, they say this church, that is representative of God. They say this group of people, this random 20, 40, I don't know how big your church is. Mine is small. Okay. There's like 50 people that come out there. I mean, I know, what am I asking, chicken spoke? I know there's nobody that goes to the church. There's like 5 people. They're all family. But, you know, if you have a bad experience, and typically that comes from someone condemning you or judging you. A lot of times that's some flaw you have that they have singled out, or they're interpreting the Bible in a malevolent way, and that's their example of God. So they think that is a failure, and that God is either not worth following, or that's their proof that he doesn't exist or something. So I think that's what happens. I think the people of the church sour this for people that could potentially come to Christ.
Yeah. I think a lot of it may be also, let's say you're sitting, you know, in church and the particular topic that day is something that pertains to you, and you don't agree with it. People take it as, God, I just had it right on top of my head. I didn't lost it.
Come on, Beaver. Do
just
it.
like that. Gone. I lost it. It's gone.
I can ask the Alexa what the weather is.
No. In other words, people say, oh, that's where I was going with it. People will sit there and have a guilty conscience about stuff, right? And so that, I feel like that's why they run out, is they know they're guilty and they feel like people are passing judgment on them, and that everybody's looking at them as if they're perfect and saying, oh, look at this guy, he's got flaws or he's wrong.
Yeah.
When really that's not the way they should be looking at it, because everybody in that church has done wrong. They're not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the outside world thinks Christian people look at themselves as perfect when we really don't.
Right.
At least I don't anyway.
I think most of them don't think that way, because if you are truly Christian, that is in fact proof that you think nobody's perfect. Or, no earthly person is perfect. But I think you're right. I think some of that is the person themselves and the self-esteem coming into the church, that you might be bracing yourself for being judged. I think you're just ready for it, because you know all of your deeds. You don't know everyone else, what they're capable of, what they've done or not done, but you know all of your deeds. So when you go into the church, you know exactly what you did. Maybe it's drugs, maybe it's drinking, maybe it's something, whatever your deed was, infidelity. This is all very common stuff. You know what you did. You feel like everyone can see you. It's like the old dream when you're at school with no clothes on or something. You know how people have that dream, except it's at the church. So anything that someone says, it's colored in your eyes in that light. So if someone's saying something that might not even be judgmental, but you're already prepped and ready to defend yourself, you could see how that could be misconstrued.
And I'm not saying that there isn't, on the other aspect of this, I'm not saying that there's not judgment happening in churches, because I think it absolutely is.
I think so
in
too.
some cases. I can, I'm sure you can think of many times too. You have that one person that doesn't come to church all that often, or whatever the case may be. Or for example, okay, all the people that show up at Easter time.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
Okay, so you have tons of people that show up at Easter, but they're not at church the rest of the time, and so you have all these other people, or you have certain people in the audience that might be looking around going, oh, look at so-and-so and his wife over there. They ain't showed up in months, but they're here on Easter Sunday,
Yeah.
So there's judgment there. The church is not perfect. It's not.
Think about that, because I probably said that myself, sitting in a church pew, looking over somebody and said, oh, well, Troy's here. It must be Christmas or Easter, And instead of saying that, how much better would it be to say, all right, he's here. What can we do to try to show him why he should stay here?
Yep.
I mean, I think that, I don't know, maybe it's because of my own experiences. A lot of people don't do that.
I learned that at a young age. I think I've shared this story with you before. My best friend has a twin brother. I mean, you have a hard time telling them apart. My best friend, military guy, never done a drug in his life, straightforward, good family guy. His twin brother, exact opposite. Been on drugs, you name it, not the greatest lifestyle. When we were young, when we were like 16, we all went to the same church, and the twin brother would come to church and he'd be high. He would have smoked pot before he come to church. And so there would be other youth members, that's, oh, look at so-and-so over there. He's high, blah, 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 this and that. Well, it come up one night. We were standing outside after church, and the youth pastor was standing out there with us. And I was guilty of saying the same thing, but there was a few of us there that was like, he don't need to be here. He's coming into this church high. That's ridiculous. We shouldn't allow him into church like that, blah, blah, blah. And the youth pastor, Sam, I'll never forget this. And he said, I'd rather have him here high than him not be here at all. And it took me a long time to grasp that. But if you push him away because he comes into church high, you just pushed him away, and there's a good chance you'll never get him back. Versus having him there, he knows he's wrong. He knows he ain't supposed to smoke weed and then walk up in church. He is dealing with that in his own conscience. All you can do is teach him and love him and hope that he comes around.
That's exactly right. I didn't always see that either. Like you're saying,
Yeah.
I would judge people for doing stuff just like that. And I think the reason why I judged them, and I don't know if other people feel the same way about this, but sometimes you want to feel good about yourself. So you'll find stuff that's flawed in other people so that you can feel good about you not having that particular flaw, at least not that day. So you can feel better about yourself instead of just kind of. I remember we were talking about John chapter 3, living in the light. Same chapter as we know. For God so loved the, all that. John 3:16. You go on down there and talk about living in the light instead of the darkness. I think that's exactly what it is. You got to keep everything in the light. It makes you humble because you ask yourself, would you do this? It sounds like a mother would say to a child, would you do this in front of Jesus? And there's a lot of stuff that people would say, I don't think I'd do it in front of Jesus, but they do it anyway. I mean, I think that's living in the light. If you can do that, then you can welcome that person to the church, I think. Yeah. Because you should want that for them. You should want that everlasting life because the alternative is, like it says, whatever branches don't bear fruit get cut off and thrown into a fire. You shouldn't want anybody to go through that.
How do you get the people that we'll say has had a bad experience in the past? Maybe someone passed judgment on them, whatever the case may be. How do you get them back in church? How do you get them back? How does the church get them back?
Speaking broadly, like the church, if I knew them personally, it would be a lot easier to just have a one-on-one talk. But as a church, you know what? I think you have to be humble collectively as a church, because I think churches sometimes they come off as just, I don't know. I think the word I read the word in the Bible is like howdy or howdy, like HAUGH or something like that. Okay, like I said, I'm not a good speller. But like uppity, stuff like that. Just, you feel like you're better than others. It's like try to reverse that image. So when someone comes in there, or I don't know, if someone's already walked out of the room, it's tough unless you have someone like a pastor or whatever type of church you have, maybe deacons or something like that. Someone that goes out into the community. I mean, that's one way of doing it, but it'd be very tough. And if you've already compelled them to leave, so to speak, that would be hard to do.
Okay, well, we won't focus on one particular person. How about this? This is a little bit more broad. A lot of society looks at church as uppity people that might have a radical thought process or whatever, or that the church looks down upon lesser people or whatever. How do you change that common misconception with the community or with the country? How does the church change that? How does the church change the world looking at them that way?
I think the church has to create a narrative, a public narrative that goes against the narrative that's created against them. It's not just that they actually act a certain way. It's that every representation of a Christian in the media, I won't say Hollywood, because Hollywood's kind of a stereotypical saying. Just like on television, in movies. No, not the movies like we watched. Like one we watched last week, which, by the way, got put back up on YouTube. So, thank you, God, for that, because it's a great clip. I hope you went over and watched it. Yeah, it got cut off, but you can watch it now. I don't know why. But we have representation like that from the Christian community, which gives a great look at Christianity and what it's supposed to be. But if you go to television, any Christian on TV, any Christian represented in the media has a negative light. It's these... What's this? I had what do they call them? I'm trying to remember. That I sent you the thing about Courageous, the Rotten Tomatoes thing, where it caused them narrow-minded, dogmatic people. It's just there's 20 ways to write a review of a Christian movie. They chose the most negative way to write that review, even if they thought it was awful. It could have been done so much differently.
Yep.
But until we have some kind of stream, a narrative from our side, so to speak, it's not our side, but from Christian people, to reverse that, they get a steady diet of the opposite. So I don't know. I don't know how you do it. I mean, like the movies made by these Kendrick brothers, The Courageous, Fireproof, movies like that, that's one way to do it. Because if you watch that movie, that's really what you should be watching. Because it's all about love. It's all about it's overcoming adversity, staying close to God, and sometimes, falling away then coming back. It's a good tale, because let's be honest, some of us doubt God sometimes because we're human and bad things happen and we say, oh no, there is no God, or oh no, he doesn't love me, or something like that. I mean, let's be honest about it. I think that's what we had to do. Even social media. I try to write social media stuff. I thought I was going to make Facebook angry, but a lot of people came out and said those were good posts. The ones where I just randomly write something like Jesus is the Savior of the world or something. I thought I was going to be kicked around, but it wasn't the case. I mean, people came out and said, yeah, that's right. So I think they're waiting for people.
I think it involves the church getting more active in the community, getting out there and showing what you're about and that you do love everybody and that you're not passing judgment to people. And show, in other words, be the example. Don't tell somebody what they should do. You be the example and let them see how they should be through you and through God.
Yeah, that's a good point. On a local level, whenever we had these hurricanes the last few years, every few years seems like we have a hurricane that causes worse flooding. Making sure that your church is out in the forefront of helping people. So the people that have been hurt the worst by these natural disasters and just by chance happenings get to see what Christians are all about right there in the first person. That's probably a great way to do it. Just the way you're talking about getting out to the community, even having like the Christmas plays and stuff. A ton of people always show up to the Christmas plays, like people's family and stuff, to watch whatever kid is playing Joseph, whatever kid's a sheep. You know what I'm saying? Always a family shows up. A great opportunity just to show what Christianity is all about. And I'm glad to say my church always seems to do a pretty good job with that. I've always been pretty pleased with it. So I think that's, I agree with you. I think that's what we had to do. Stuff local level, but I don't know nationally, you know, we have so few like big name movie makers that are Christian. I mean, they're just not out there, but the ones that are made.
And a lot of the big names are not a good representation of the church.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sorry.
That's
They're
right.
just not.
That's right. That's right. So who are you thinking about when you think about that? Saying that a movie that's represented as Christian but is not Christian. Do you have anything in particular?
A movie?
A movie or a person or something like that.
I don't know. It's hard to just pick one right now on the spot.
I think about, you know, country music. You know, people seem to think that country music is more Christian than other musics. I don't believe that's so. I really don't. When you listen to the lyrics and stuff, it's no, you know, people always say, in my area, you hear, I like to listen to country music. And what's your least favorite music? Rap. But to me, the same morality is being displayed on a lot of both of them, you know? So, I mean, it's not much different. I mean, this isn't Carrie Underwood, something about the water I'm talking about. This is about all the drinking and stuff like that, womanizing and, you know, things along those lines. Oh, man. There goes all my friends.
There they went.
There they go. I mean, that's all it took.
How dare you talk about country music?
I love George Strait, and you better not talk about George Strait. I like George Strait too. Okay, I like him too. You know, "Chill of an Early Fall" is a great song.
You about made me spit.
I choose an example from like 1988. You know, Adelida. If you know all the words of that one, I'll give you $10.
Oh Lord!
Oh, I feel it. It must be over.
Yeah, it's over.
Hey, it's 9:02. Yeah, it's 9:02.
We went to 1988. George Strait. It's definitely over.
Yeah, that's got to be it. Yeah, that's got to be it. It's finished. I'll say. Well, I guess is this where I turn it over to you? Here's our email again, ma'am. I'll leave that up on the screen.
This is where I turn it over to you.
Is that how that works? Wait a second. Wait, that can't be right. Didn't I start this show?
I don't know. You get it too.
All right, I'll let it. Well, you can say your goodbye. You say your goodbye, and I'll end it.
Well, I appreciate everybody coming by. All 14 of you.
Oh snap! Who brought a friend?
Up in the world, Zach. Moving up in the world, Zach. Moving up.
We're going sideways.
No, we truly appreciate it. You guys sit here and listen to us talk about random stuff. We truly do. If you have any ideas for topics, by all means, send them to the email on the screen. We'll see you guys next week.
Excellent. All right, guys. It's been a lot of fun, like you said. Had a good time. Hey, it wasn't as random as it appears. You came up with a good topic. Had some. I'm reading next week. I'm reading stuff from ancient Rome. All right. I'm not wasting this typing. Okay, copy and pasting. I want to read it next week, though. All right, guys. We'll be back next week. Same channel, 8 p.m. And there was something else I had to say. Oh yeah. You can sign up for, hey, this is good. I remember two different things here. You can sign up for live notifications look at the right camera, sign up for live notifications, go down in the description of this video, and in my mind, I'm realizing I didn't put the link in there. But come back tomorrow, and I'll put the link. I'll put the link in there after the show, and you can listen to this as a podcast. Men with Issues.
Yeah, the new podcast is up.
That's right. It's not Man with Issues. It's Men with Issues. The link's in the description. So don't go back to the old one because it'll be scrapped here shortly. I think that's it. Good grief, I forgot the link. I'm sorry. I'll put it in there.
Way to go, guy.
I know. And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye, and we'll see you guys next week.